welcome to Barracuda Bites. I am your host, Barracuda. We will continue our series on Ronald H. Nash's The Meaning of History. We've moved from ancient cycles and early Christian linear views through Augustine to Vico. In Chapter 7, Nash examines Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, and his influential contribution to modern philosophies of history, the idea of progress. What did the idea of progress mean for the sciences in Kant's day? This period of time, called the Enlightenment, belonged to individuals very hostile and unfriendly towards religion. Nash states in his book, many individuals of the Enlightenment did not need the help of God or the Bible or the church in discovering the truth. Their ultimate authority was their own intellects. Thus Kant, a major Enlightenment philosopher best known for his critiques of reason, also wrote key essays on history, notably Idea for a Universal History with a Cosmopolitan Purpose. Nash presents Kant as advancing a secular, linear view where history moves towards greater rationality, moral improvement, and all nations united in a one-world federation. This chapter highlights the shift from religious to philosophical accounts of progress and sets the stage for more later radical thinkers like Hegel and Marx. Let's explore this period more deeply. So, grab a coffee, grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and let's dive in. Section 1. Kant's context and the Enlightenment background. Nash places Kant in the later Enlightenment, a time of growing confidence in human reason, science, and moral autonomy, after the scientific revolution and amid political upheaval. Kant's critical philosophy revolutionized the theory of knowledge and ethics, but his writings on history are more speculative and goal-oriented. Kant believed the history of the human race, when seen as a whole, has an eternalized goal hidden in nature's plan to bring about a perfect constitution and an external purpose of full and complete progressive development. Humankind, apart from God, the Bible, or the church influence, has the capabilities to bring about the perfect society. The later mantra of this philosophy of history is progress or progressivism, and is forever etched in the history of human misery. The key philosophical influence during this time comes from Jean-Jacques Rousseau's ideas on human development and the French Revolution's ideas. Kant sought to reconcile human freedom with natural laws while finding meaning in history without relying primarily on God, biblical revelation, or the church. Nash notes Kant's distinction between scientific history, facts, and philosophical history, interpreting patterns and purposes. Kant suggested a regulative idea, a guiding assumption that helps make sense of history as a whole, even if not fully provable or supported by trial and error or evidence of any kind. Let's think about this question. In an age of rapid change, how do Christians find real direction and understanding in history? Section 2. Kant's idea for a universal history. His 9 theses. Nash walks us through Kant's unorthodox essays, which outlines 9 perspective points for a progressivist universal history. Immediately, we are reminded of Proverbs 14, verse 1. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end are the ways of death. So here are Kant's elements, his 9 theses, 1 through 3. Nature's plan, not God, develops human capacities fully in this species over generations through a collective and not individuals. Reason requires time and conflict to mature. As a cog in the wheel of time, your individual human contribution is not important. What Kant means is found in a famous mantra: the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Number 4, unsocial social ability. Humans have a tendency to associate, yet resist through competition and antagonism. This drives progress, much like how rivalry spurs innovation. The individual human contribution is not important. The antagonist must give way to the collective. Competition is a means towards an end of an upward climb. The human collective is the only principle governing progress that matters. The end justifies the means. 5 through 7. The goal is a perfect civil constitution, a republican government with rule of law, and eventually a cosmopolitan federation of states ensuring perpetual peace. War and conflict ironically serves nature's purpose by pushing humanity towards compliance and cooperation. Chaos is a method. Loss of life is a means. 8 through 9. History can be viewed as the realization of nature's hidden plan for a rational moral order. A philosophical attempt at universal history aids this progress. Kant simply cannot admit or prove that history has a purpose and a plan, so he and other historians must presuppose it. Nash explains Kant's philosophical theory. Nature, and not necessarily providence, works through human freedom and conflict towards enlightenment, utopia, and a moral culture. Although individuals may not see the full picture, progress is not guaranteed in every generation, but discernible through the mechanisms at work. Once again, let's reflect. Where do you see unsocial sociability at work in politics, technology, or culture today? What is the real end result according to Kant and other historians? Section 3. Strengths of Kant's view and Nash's appreciation. Nash fairly and objectively highlights Kant's strengths. Linear direction with purpose. Kant rejects pure cycles. History does move towards rational and moral improvement on its own without acknowledging God or the biblical linear pattern. Realism about the human nature. Antagonism and conflict are drivers, not naive optimism. Kant denies human depravity and that individuals are sinners, just unaware of nature's methods and purposes of bringing about enlightenment and perfection out of turmoil and turbulence, chaos and confusion. Conformity is the final solution. A cosmopolitan vision. Universal human rights, international new world order and peace, ideas influencing later liberal thought and institutions. Kant and later historians deny the consummation of all things, the return of Jesus Christ, the final judgment, the new heaven, the new earth, new Jerusalem, all under the rule and reign of Jesus Christ. Kant and later liberal motto is, "We got this, God." And finally, philosophical humility, so called. Kant uses regulative ideas that move scientific inquiry from illusion to myth, past transcendence towards scientific progress and systematic knowledge, rather than claiming absolute knowledge. What we can know, experience, and what is unknown, supernatural, are treated as if, but never as fact or truth. Kant bridges ancient and modern philosophy of history, but provides a secular framework that retains philosophical doctrines without heavy reliance on special revelation. Nash appreciates how Kant takes history seriously as a domain for philosophical reflection. Still, Kant paves the way for many more radical and radicalized departures from God, facts, truth, and evidence-based science, or the biblical linear view of history. This view influenced 19th century optimism and remains relevant in discussions of globalization, human rights, progressivism, communism, socialism, cultural Marxism, social justice, and moral progress without the need of God, Scripture, or the Church. Let's think once again. Does Kant's vision of progress through conflict resonate with or trouble your view of current global challenges? Section 4. Nash's Christian critique and limitations. Nash, as a Christian philosopher, offers balanced but pointed evaluation of Kant. Number 1, secular humanism. Progress relies on autonomous reason and nature's plan rather than God's redemptive sovereignty. It rejects the biblical drama of creation, fall, redemption. It's overly optimistic while acknowledging conflict. Kant's faith is eventual, rational, moral perfection that underestimates sin's depths, per Augustine. History shows regression as well as advances. The problem of evil and suffering? Individual lives and generations may suffer greatly for the species. Progress is cold and heartless without offering comfort, hope, or an eternal perspective. No ultimate eschaton. Progress is an open-ended straight line with no foreseeable conclusion. It rejects linear biblical history, the final age, and the consummation of all things, including the last judgment and the defeat of evil, the eternal blessedness of the righteous, and, in some traditions, the creation of a new heaven and new earth. Epistemological issues. Can unassisted and unrestrained reason truly discern nature's plan without taking for granted a purposeful creator? This future is dystopic, dehumanized, dark, and depressing. Nash contrasts this with the fuller Christian linear view. Purpose grounded in God's character, hope, beyond history, and realism about depravity and sin. In Kant, Enlightenment progressivism finds its most brilliant and revealing expression. Commanding strengths paired with vital vulnerabilities, crowned by a complete and dehumanizing absence of warmth, humanity, or genuine hope. Once again, let's ask a question. How does a biblical view of progress differ from Kant's in giving meaning to personal suffering or apparent setbacks? And finally, Section 5. Key takeaways and practical application. Summarizing Nash's Chapter 7 from his book. Number 1. Leaving God out. Kant advances a linear approach for the philosophy of history centered on human progress towards what he believed to be a rational, moral, and cosmopolitan order via unsocial sociability. Strengths. Kant acknowledged the reality of the conflict, developed a universal vision, and advanced the philosophical methods to understand history, but he fell short in a big way. Limitations. Kant built his philosophy on secular foundations. It was overly optimistic, arrogant, and intentionally disregarding the human depravity and willfully denying sin and God's ultimate purpose of redemption in Jesus Christ. This was perfect for future radicals and radicalized individuals. Kant was laying the groundwork for more radical critiques of progress for Hegel, Marx, and later radicalized revolutionaries that produced tremendous devastation and loss of life. This week, I want you to track a progress narrative in news or culture. Tech, rights, global cooperation. Ask, what worldview assumptions underlie it? And how does Scripture's linear story, with Christ at the center, offer a more robust hope? Journal reflections or discuss this with a group or with a friend. That concludes our exploration of Immanuel Kant, the Enlightenment, and Chapter 7. Next, we'll look at Harder and Historicism. Thanks for listening. I'm excited to learn if this series is sharpening your thinking. Share it on the website and reflect on one insight you have learned in Chapter 7. True progress ultimately finds its meaning in God's sovereign purposes. God bless, and I'll see you next time.